At the dawn of the 20th century, the Ottoman Empire still occupied vast territory across Anatolia, the Middle East, and southeastern Europe. Yet its power existed more in memory than in reality. Once a dominant imperial force linking East and West, the empire had spent the previous century in steady decline. Military defeats, administrative weakness, economic dependence on European creditors, and rising nationalist movements within its borders had eroded the authority of the central state. By the late 19th century, the Ottomans were commonly described by European powers as the sick man of Europe, a phrase that reflected both political reality and foreign ambition. Reforms known as the Tanzimat attempted to modernize institutions, reorganize taxation, and introduce legal equality, but these measures struggled against entrenched interests, limited resources, and constant external pressure. As the 20th century began, the empire faced mounting instability. Industrial development lagged far behind Europe. Railways were sparse and often financed and controlled by foreign companies. Agriculture remained the backbone of the economy, yet productivity was low, land ownership was unequal, and rural populations lived under heavy tax burdens. Education was fragmented, divided between religious schools and limited state institutions, while literacy rates remained low across much of the population. Urban centers, such as Istanbul, Izmir, and Salonika showed signs of modernization, but vast rural areas remained largely unchanged from earlier centuries. Daily life for ordinary people was shaped by subsistence farming, local traditions, and strong communal ties, with little direct engagement with imperial politics. The empire's political system struggled to adapt. Constitutional experiments in the late 19th and early 20th centuries created parliaments and promised representation, yet real power remained unstable, shifting between the sultan, military officers, and reformist elites. The Young Turk movement emerged from within this environment, calling for constitutional rule and modernization. Their rise culminated in the Revolution of 1908, which restored the constitution and reduced the authority of the sultan. However, internal divisions, competing ideologies, and growing ethnic nationalism weakened cohesion. The Balkan Wars of 1912 and 1913 further devastated the empire, stripping it of most of its remaining European territories and triggering waves of refugees into Anatolia. These conflicts exposed military weakness and deepened economic and social strain. World War I proved catastrophic. Aligning with the Central Powers, the Ottoman Empire entered a global conflict it was ill-prepared to sustain. Fighting took place across multiple fronts, including the Caucasus, Mesopotamia, the Dardanelles, and the Arabian Peninsula. While Ottoman forces achieved notable defensive successes, particularly at Gallipoli, the overall toll was immense. Infrastructure collapsed under wartime pressure, food shortages spread, and disease claimed countless lives. Civilians suffered as transportation networks broke down and agricultural production declined. By the war's end in 1918, the empire was exhausted, its treasury depleted, and its authority shattered. The Armistice of Mudros marked not only military defeat, but political collapse. Allied forces occupied key territories, including Istanbul. Plans were drawn to partition Anatolia among victorious powers, threatening the very existence of a Turkish homeland. The Ottoman government, weakened and discredited, lacked the capacity to resist. This period was marked by uncertainty, hardship, and fear. Many people faced displacement, poverty, and the loss of traditional structures that had governed their lives for centuries. The sense of imperial identity that once bound diverse populations together dissolved, replaced by confusion and resentment. Out of this collapse emerged a nationalist resistance movement centered in Anatolia, led by Mustafa Kemal, a former Ottoman officer. This movement rejected foreign occupation and the authority of the compromised imperial government. Through a series of congresses and military campaigns, nationalist forces organized political institutions independent of Istanbul. The Turkish War of Independence unfolded between 1919 and 1922, involving conflict against occupying forces and internal opponents. Despite limited resources, the nationalists gradually consolidated control, mobilizing local populations and building a new vision of sovereignty grounded in territorial nationalism rather than imperial rule. The victory of the nationalist movement led to the abolition of the Sultanate in 1922 and the formal proclamation of the Republic of Turkey in 1923. The new state represented a radical break with the Ottoman past. The caliphate was abolished, religious institutions were brought under state control, and a secular legal system replaced Islamic law. These reforms were not gradual, they were swift and transformative, designed to reshape society at every level. The leadership believed that survival in a modern world required decisive change, even at the cost of social disruption. Economic conditions in the early republic were extremely difficult. Years of war had devastated infrastructure, reduced population, and exhausted capital. Agriculture remained dominant, employing the majority of the population, yet productivity was low and mechanization limited. The state pursued policies of economic self-sufficiency, encouraging domestic production, and establishing state-owned enterprises in key sectors such as textiles, mining, and transportation. Industrialization progressed slowly, constrained by limited investment and technical expertise. For ordinary citizens, daily life remained defined by scarcity, hard labor, and modest expectations. Education became a central pillar of reform. A unified national education system replaced religious and foreign schools, with the goal of creating a literate, secular citizenry. The adoption of the Latin alphabet in 1928 was one of the most profound changes, dramatically altering written communication and accelerating literacy efforts. Schools were expanded, teacher training emphasized, and curricula redesigned to promote national identity and scientific thinking. These reforms took time to reach rural areas, where access to education remained limited and traditional practices persisted. Women's rights advanced significantly during this period, at least in legal terms. Women gained civil rights, access to education, and political participation earlier than in many other countries. These changes were most visible in urban centers, where women entered professional life and public institutions. In rural areas, however, social change moved more slowly. Traditional family structures and gender roles continued to shape daily life, reflecting the uneven reach of reform across the country. Urban and rural life differed sharply. Cities became centers of administration, education, and modernization, while villages remained focused on agriculture and local customs. Infrastructure development favored urban areas, leaving many rural regions isolated. Poverty was widespread, and social mobility limited. Yet there was also a strong sense of collective purpose, driven by the memory of national struggle and the promise of building a new state. National identity was actively constructed through education, language reform, and state symbolism, replacing imperial loyalty with republican citizenship. Political life in the early republic was tightly controlled. While elections and representative institutions existed, power remained concentrated in the hands of the ruling elite. Stability was prioritized over pluralism, with the belief that rapid modernization required centralized authority. Over time, this approach created tension between reform and representation, shaping the political culture of the new state. By the mid-20th century, Turkey stood as a sovereign republic forged from imperial collapse, war, and reform. Its society had been fundamentally reshaped, yet many challenges remained unresolved. Economic hardship, regional inequality, and social transformation defined everyday life. The foundations of a modern nation-state had been laid, but the path forward was neither simple nor secure. In 2026, Turkey stands as a complex, strategically positioned nation bridging Europe, Asia, and the Middle East. With a population exceeding 85 million, it is one of the most populous countries in its region, characterized by a dynamic demographic structure and extensive urbanization. Major metropolitan areas such as Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir function as economic, political, and cultural centers, while a dense network of cities supports regional development across Anatolia. The country's geographic location continues to shape its role as a corridor for trade, energy, and transportation between continents. Turkey's economy in 2026 is diversified and deeply integrated into global markets. Manufacturing remains a core strength, with automotive production, machinery, textiles, household appliances, and defense industries contributing significantly to exports. The country is among the world's leading producers of commercial vehicles and white goods, supplying markets across Europe, the Middle East, and North Africa. Small and medium-sized enterprises form the backbone of industrial production, supported by large conglomerates operating across multiple sectors. Agriculture continues to play an important role, with Turkey ranking among the world's top producers of agricultural products such as wheat, fruits, vegetables, and nuts. Supported by varied climates and extensive arable land, infrastructure development has transformed mobility and logistics. Extensive highway networks connect major cities and regions, while high-speed rail lines link key urban centers. Major airports, including one of the largest aviation hubs in the world, position Turkey as a central node in global air travel. Ports along the Aegean, Mediterranean, and Black Sea facilitate maritime trade, while pipelines and energy corridors strengthen the country's role in regional energy transit. Large-scale construction projects have reshaped urban skylines and transportation capacity, reflecting sustained investment in connectivity. Technology and digitalization are increasingly central to economic activity. Turkey has a growing technology sector, with startups and innovation hubs concentrated in major cities. Digital services, e-commerce, fintech, and software development have expanded rapidly, supported by a young, tech-literate population. The defense and aerospace industries have gained international visibility, with domestically developed systems contributing to exports and strategic autonomy. Research and development spending has increased, with universities and private firms collaborating in applied science and engineering. Education in 2026 is widespread and institutionalized, with near-universal primary and secondary enrollment. Universities across the country educate millions of students, producing graduates in engineering, medicine, social sciences, and the arts. Public and private institutions coexist, and international academic cooperation has expanded. Challenges remain in quality, access, and alignment with labor market needs, but education continues to be a central component of social mobility and economic competitiveness. Healthcare is organized through a comprehensive national system combining public provision with private services. Modern hospitals, advanced medical technologies, and expanded health insurance coverage have improved access to care across the population. Urban centers host specialized medical facilities, while regional hospitals extend services to smaller cities. Health indicators such as life expectancy and infant mortality reflect long-term improvements, supported by preventive care and public health programs. Turkish society in 2026 is diverse and urbanized, shaped by internal migration, global connections, and cultural continuity. Family structures coexist with individual lifestyles, reflecting a blend of tradition and modernity. Media, entertainment, and digital platforms play a significant role in shaping public discourse and cultural expression. Turkish television series, music, and cinema reach international audiences, contributing to cultural influence beyond national borders. Tourism remains a major sector, drawing visitors to historic cities, coastal regions, and cultural heritage sites. The country's archaeological legacy, natural landscapes, and hospitality infrastructure support year-round tourism activity. Cultural preservation efforts coexist with mass tourism, balancing economic benefits with conservation challenges. The service sector benefits significantly from tourism-related employment and investment. Politically, Turkey operates under a presidential system, with centralized executive authority and national elections shaping governance. Domestic politics are characterized by active participation, strong institutions, and ongoing debates about governance, economic policy, and social issues. Foreign policy reflects Turkey's strategic position, maintaining engagement with Europe, the Middle East, Central Asia, and global institutions. The country plays an active role in regional diplomacy, security arrangements, and international organizations, leveraging its geographic and political significance. Economic and social challenges persist alongside strengths. Inflation, income inequality, employment dynamics, and external economic pressures require ongoing policy responses. Rapid urban growth places demands on housing, transportation, and environmental management. Climate considerations increasingly influence agricultural planning, energy investment, and urban development strategies. These issues shape public policy and long-term planning across sectors. Looking ahead, Turkey in 2026 stands at a point defined by scale, connectivity, and complexity. Its economy, infrastructure, and society reflect decades of transformation and adaptation within a changing global environment. The country's future direction is shaped by its capacity to balance growth with stability, innovation with inclusion, and national priorities with international engagement. As a nation linking regions, markets, and cultures, Turkey continues to navigate its path within an interconnected world, carrying forward the institutions, capabilities, and ambitions that define its present state.